Dr. Will Davis Jr. always brings us a blessing, but he saved the brightest for this visit. I think he'll agree. The co-founder of the church where Will is senior pastor in Austin, Texas, is also his wife of 26 years. A big welcome to Susie Davis.
Thank you so much.
We've heard so much about you, Susie.
I'm so glad to be here, and I've heard so much about you guys, and I'm just honored to be here with both of you, actually.
Now, did you catch this guy misquoting the title of one of your books?
He did. He blundered it, but that's okay. It's called The 21-Day Fast Diet that I recently wrote. It's my newest book, and it's out. It's an ebook. It's online. You can check it out at the21dayfastdiet.com.
Okay.
And it just to new year start, eat right, reset your palate, maybe lose a few pounds, feel better at the end. It's wonderful.
Good. You've written a number of books. Parenting Your Teens and Loving It.
Right.
You have 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
How old are they? Where are they?
You want to handle that one?
25, 22, and 18. The 18-year-old's still at home. One's out of college, one's about to be out of college, and they're delightful.
Nobody's married yet?
Nope.
No.
You have so much to look forward to, but you have a very big and busy church. What's your congregation like?
They're like us. They're crazy. They're a lot of fun.
They're weird and wonderful.
They're weird. This is okay. We would go to church there if we didn't work there. That's how good our church is. Most pastors won't say that.
No.
If I could just go to church somewhere, I'd go to our church.
You love what you're doing.
It's good.
We do. We really do.
Well, I hate to go to what isn't lovely, but it's really your confession, Susie.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were a mess of a mother.
I was a mess of a mother, and I have to rewind a little bit just so you can know where that story started. But I fell in love with God when I was just like 12 years old. I heard the message of how God came to save me, and I embraced Him, and I loved Him wholeheartedly, and I read the Bible, and I believed what it said. And then when I was in 8th grade, something really traumatic happened. I was in my classroom at school, and one of our fellow students walked into the classroom in front of all of us, and he shot and killed our teacher right there in front of us. And so I went from, loving God and believing everything He said to really feeling distrustful. And as the years rolled over, I still loved Him, but I didn't trust God. And I didn't believe that He had a good plan for my life, because I thought, if God is God, He could have stopped that. And if God is God, I didn't have to be there, and the teacher didn't have to die. So as you can imagine, it was really traumatic and disturbing. And as I went on and walked with God, and I got married, and I became a young mother, I just was a freak. I tried to control everything. I was nervous. I wouldn't stay by myself. And I really started to kind of have a breakdown, and it was really spiritual in nature, because I really couldn't figure out how to handle the horrible thing that happened with everything God said He had for me and in my life. And honestly, I have to credit Will with being so patient with me and loving me and praying me through that. And you started praying a specific prayer for me without my knowledge.
Proverbs 31, I think it's 25. The Proverbs woman smiles at the future, or laughs at the days to come, one translation says, and is clothed with strength and dignity. And I believe in pinpoint prayers, which are just little sharp scriptural intercessions.
So you made that verse
I just
your
said,
prayer.
God, do that for Susie. Make her that woman. And I watched her become that woman. I mean, she smiles at the future. She laughs at the days to come. She's clothed with strength and dignity. Words of wisdom come out of her mouth. God transformed my wife because of her obedience more than anything. But I started praying that for her, and I watched it happen.
Boy. Instead of hounding me, He prayed for me.
I didn't hound you at all, did I? Not once.
Well,
Never.
you've hounded me in other ways, but
yes,
in that instance, I don't think that, when there are people who've been through brokenness, telling them the right thing to do isn't really the thing that's going to fix them.
Yeah, beating on the wound. I can't
it doesn't
see
work.
that working.
But Will prayed, and he prayed a long time, and I didn't think I needed to laugh at the future. I thought I needed to control the future.
Yes.
And then God did something monumental and beautiful that is just beyond description. Our kids were all pretty young. Our youngest was probably 3, and we often go to Colorado in the summers. And I went, and we all went, and I ended up on a hike with a group, and there was a hike master taking us through this park, this portion of the park called Uzell Falls, right outside of Estes Park, Colorado. And we were hiking through this dense forest, and I was talking to a girl who was hiking next to me. I didn't know her, and we came around the bend after we'd been through this lush green area, and the hike master stopped the hike and he said, I want to point out an area where there's been a burn. And I had been talking to the girl, and my eyes were down on the trail, and I looked up, and for miles and miles and miles, all I saw was just this grand landscape of burned timbers, just trees standing tall, but it looked like a ghost village, just burned and charred, and logs across the path. And as far as I could see, I saw this area where a forest fire had ravaged all the trees and all the green, and just, it was dead. And I looked up and I just started bawling, crying, and all I thought was, and I heard God say, you've had a burn in your life. This is a picture of what you've been through, you know. And I think for me, it was such a personal meeting with God, for Him to take the time to open my eyes to it, and for me to see that. And I reached down and touched the wood that was fallen, and there was ash on my hand, black ash on my hand. And you know, I kept up with the hike. I felt like such a weirdo because I was bawling, crying, and really hiked it, and then came back down. And then I told Will what had happened, how God had given me that picture of what the inside of my soul looked like. But what else happened is, when I saw those, you know, fallen trees and the ash and the timbers, and I could touch it, what was happening is there was regrowth in the forest. Little teeny seedlings that had come up.
It's a wondrous thing that happens after a forest fire, isn't it?
It is.
You wouldn't think there could be life after the devastation.
No, and you wouldn't think that there could be new life after something traumatic happens. You know, that someone could laugh at the future after they'd been fearing for decades and been so afraid. But that's what God does. And the most amazing part, I think, of the story is coming back and telling my family what had happened and how personal God had been to me. And I called the park rangers to get some information on the fire, because I thought it had happened just a couple years earlier. And what I found is that fire had actually happened the same year that the teacher had been murdered.
When you were 14. Amazing.
I mean, who does that?
God.
He does. And I'm not some special kid that He singled out and was like, I need to show this to Susie. I think that, I believe and know that God has those kind of pictures and stories for you and for Will and for everybody.
He sets the prisoners free.
He does.
Whatever kind of prison is keeping us from the abundant life He died to give us.
Right.
Did you know how critical it was, Will? Did you know how bound, how imprisoned your precious wife was?
Yeah, only because it takes one to know one. So I had my own junk that she was praying for me to be healed in. But yeah, she was pretty fearful and wouldn't stay alone, and I think it was a stronghold. And it was pretty easy to spot that Satan had her on this one. She was always living for the next shoe to drop. And God had just absolutely, I remember a very clear moment when she actually forgave the guy. The guy who shot the teacher lived 2 doors up from her, so he's a friend and a neighbor. And
did he get to live at home?
Well, he lived at home before and never really, he was 13 at the time when he did it. So he spent some time in a psychologist's house getting some training and never went to prison. Still lives in Austin. But when she forgave him, the chains started coming off. And Susie has been transformed by that. I mean, it's been a really amazing story. And that burn and that new growth really is a metaphor for what God does in our lives.
We have a picture of the char, and I mean, we don't have the whole forest here, but there's a slice. You can, that's like 20 years after.
Yeah, imagine 30 or 40 acres around
the
you.
fire.
Yeah.
30 or 40 acres of just black and
there's
soot.
a little guy.
And there's that brave little new growth. And those forests do come back.
They do. And you know what I think? You know, I think everybody at some point has a yet thou art holy moment. And I say that because the forest was a huge piece of my restoration and my
Repeat
trusting.
what you just said with that drawl.
A yet thou art holy
What drawl?
moment.
I don't know what you're talking about.
A yet thou art holy moment.
Yeah, that one of the main things, or one of the main verses, and probably the pivotal verse for me that really pulled me out of my distrust of God and kind of into a release of laughing at the future and believing good things for my life again, was Psalm 22:3. It says, I cry out to you by day and I cry out to you by night, yet thou art holy. And it's David's confession that bad things happen, I'm in pain, but you know what? You're God.
Though he slay me, yet will I trust
Though
him.
he slay me, yet I will praise him.
And I
That's
love
right.
that David confessed it and Jesus quoted it. I mean, Jesus had a yet thou art holy moment too. So,
Not my will, but thine be done.
Well, it's Psalm 22:1. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's David's prayer. And 2 verses later, yet you're still holy. And that's what Christ quoted on the cross. So it's a profound, that even though my headlines may say gloom and doom, he's still holy. That hadn't changed. And that's what sets people free.